All right, guys, let's build some NBA lineups one block at a time here. Host of the Four Seasons podcast for Ball is Life, Ryan Magdziarz and RotoWire, NBA editor Nick Whalen. Y'all know the drill for building blocks, but if anyone at home does not, these two will select who they are building their lineups around at the following positions. So, Nick, start us off at center here.
I got a few options to throw out at center. One of them doesn't have a great matchup, and that's Clint Capella going up against the Philadelphia 76ers. Obviously, Joel Embiid, not an opposing center that you generally want to target, but the scoring and the rebounding numbers and the shot blocking on certain nights for Capella are pretty eye-popping. I mean, he's essentially been like a 20-20 guy or close to it over the last month, and it hasn't really mattered who the matchup is. So if you're willing to pay up at 8,900, I do like Capella. A little bit further down, Jared Allen, if you want to target that Orlando Magic team that has the worst defense in the NBA over the last 10 games. Wendell Carter, Mo Bamba not providing a ton of resistance on the inside there. I think it's a pretty nice opportunity for Allen to bounce back after just an okay game against Toronto on Monday. And then Jusuf Nurkich, how can we not mention him going up against Memphis for the third time in 4 games? He's at 6,800. His 2 best games of the entire season came against Memphis over this past weekend. Those were both Trailblazers losses, but he had huge games in each of those. And he had another double-double against Indiana last night in just 20 minutes.
Magdziarz, what do you got, dude?
I like that Jusuf Nurkic call. I'm going to stick with the same game. I'm paying up for Jonas Valanciunas at 7,900, which is pretty cheap for him. They're playing a Portland team, which is probably my favorite matchup of the entire night. The pace is going to be extremely high. There's really no injury news yet around the league. So without value there, I'm going to go with what works. Jonas Valanciunas. This is going to be a meaningful 8 seed in the West versus 7 seed in the West game. So I think the people that are going to produce, and they've been using Jonas Valanciunas for this all year long.
All right, dude, it is a 10-game slate. So, Ryan, how about your building block at forward?
Yeah, I really like what I saw out of Jaylen Brown last night. 8,500. I think he only went up in price by $100 from last night. And tonight there's still no Kemba, and Tatum is questionable versus Charlotte team. Now, they did play horribly. Scalabrine said it was their worst loss of the season. Yeah, to an Oklahoma City team who is struggling to be an NBA team this year. But last night, Jaylen Brown, 67.3 fantasy points. I think that they need to rally behind somebody outside of the fantasy aspect. It's going to be Jaylen Brown. So I think they're going to look to Jaylen Brown, especially if Tatum's out all night long tonight.
Going to have to lean on the only active Hall of Famer in the NBA right now, too, Peyton Pritchard, dude. Nick, what do you got? Building block it forward.
I like the Jaylen Brown call. I do think Tatum is expected to play tonight, so maybe that lowers his ceiling a little bit. But yeah, OKC just cannot catch a break. They're trying to lose as many games as possible, and they just kind of keep backing their way into wins throughout this year, despite that 14-game losing streak. At forward, I like Julius Randle. If you want to pay up, good opportunity for him to bounce back. He had one of his worst games in weeks against Phoenix on Monday. But other than that game, he's pretty much, maybe not exceeded value at this price, but at least met value pretty much every night. He's averaging 40 minutes a game over his last 12. That doesn't project to slow down anytime soon, playing for Coach Tom Thibodeau. Bradley Beal, forward eligible on DraftKings. I mean, that's just scoring, and more scoring when it comes to Beal, not offering a ton in terms of rebounds or assists or defensive numbers, but he's at 34 points per game over his last 9. Of course, he had 45 in that OT loss on Monday. And then Jimmy Butler at 9,500. Again, another guy, if you want to pay up, has a good, not great matchup against San Antonio. I think he has kind of a low-key first-team All-NBA case when you start to look at all the forwards who have missed time outside of Giannis Antetokounmpo. He's averaging 2.7 steals per game over his last 13 games, which is just absolutely ridiculous.
Ryan, how about your building block at guard, dude?
So the game I'm obsessed with tonight, Portland, Memphis. I really like John Morant, $8,200. They played Portland the last 3 of those 4 games. It's a weird scheduling thing, but they're very familiar with each other. All those games are very high scoring. Their last 5 games, John Morant has played 52.6 fantasy points on average. He is kind of finding his strides, and I think that he's liking to play in these meaningful games as we wind down here in the NBA season. Season average is only 37, so he is blowing up right now. Portland 29th in defensive rating. They don't play a lick of defense, so I think Morant really goes off against Portland tonight.
What about you, Nick? Who you building around at guard?
Yeah, Morant's one of the guys on my list. I mean, he torched Portland for 46 and 63 DraftKings points, respectively, in their two matchups over the weekend. I think given that recent track record, 8,200 is actually a pretty reasonable price. I think this is a bounce back spot for Damian Lillard, too, if you do want to pay up at guard. He's been shockingly bad over the last 10 or 15 games by his standards, shooting like 35% from the field. His free throw shooting, his three-point shooting are way down as well. You have to think at some point he's going to snap out of this. And this is obviously, close to a must-win game for Portland, which is trying to climb out of that play-in spot. A little further down, Darius Garland at 7,700. No Colin Sexton again tonight for Cleveland. So I think this is a really good spot against that really bad Orlando defense. And then the last guy I'll throw out is Bogdan Bogdanovic at 7,600. Again, not a great matchup against Philadelphia, but no Trae Young for Atlanta. And he's averaging 22 points, 4.5 rebounds, 4.5 assists, 1.5 steals, and 4.4 threes per game since entering the starting lineup. He's shooting almost 50% from three. When Trae Young doesn't play, he's just been fantastic.
Let's switch over and look at the DK Sportsbook here for tonight's NBA schedule, guys. What is your favorite overall bet? It's going to be total, prop, all that jazz. You've been here before, not your first rodeo. Nick, start us off.
I like Portland plus 1.5 against Memphis. I think there's no way they lose 3 times in 4 games to this Memphis team, and I feel like they probably think they're better than, and on paper they are better than. I like Denver -4 against New Orleans tonight, and then Dennis Schroeder over 17.5 points. He's averaging 20 plus over his last 5. He has 3 straight double-doubles, playing really as well as he has all season, and I think he's really benefited from having Anthony Davis back.
Josh, favorite NBA bet tonight on the DK Sportsbook?
Yeah, I like the 76ers -7.5. Ben Simmons comes back tonight. Embiid's been there. The Hawks were hot. And without Trae Young, people were asking me, hey, are they better without Trae Young? Of course not. But they ran into Detroit Monday night, I think it was. Lost to a bad Detroit team. Did not look great. I think the no Trae is catching up with them. So I think the Sixers roll tonight.